So in previous video, I explained you how you can define some data inside your component and how you can print that data. And if your variable is actually an array of objects, then there is a way you can then loop over that array of objects. But let's go back now and see what our task is. So let's try now to print some pending tasks and finished tasks. So if we go back to application, we will delete stuff that we don't need here. For example, we don't need cities, task 1, task 2. We will define the tasks inside an array. So I will delete that. And here I also don't need this loop and task 1 and task 2. So I will just delete that here. I will save. And here I can run npm run serve to run my application, and I can visit my application here, and that's it. Okay, so now that we have deleted the stuff that we don't need, let's go down to the data and let's define here the tasks. So first of all, we have two different kinds of tasks. The first are pending tasks, and we have another list, finished tasks. So I'll just define here pending tasks, which is an array, and I will also define finished tasks. Okay, and both of these variables are arrays. So if you look carefully here, every task has a few values. So first thing that every task has is the name of the task. Then the second thing, there is an information whether the task is pending or the task is finished or done. So every task is then, let's say, is defined by two different variables. So I will, inside the pending tasks, I will define a new object, and this object is going to represent a single task. So every task has the name, and the first task is going to be called that, and every task has a Boolean value whether the task is finished or not. So I will define an attribute called is finished. Okay, and I'll say it's false because the task is not finished if it is in pending tasks. And we can define here multiple objects. So I will define another object, which is then called name is buy tickets. And this task is also is finished is set to false. If I save that, you can see here inside the pending tasks, which is array, I defined two JavaScript objects. The first one is called or has an attribute called name with the value called that, and the second one has the attribute called name with the value buy tickets. And you will see really often that every task or every objects that are normally coming from the database or some kind of API, they are most of the time having some kind of identifier. So I'll just here add identifier ID. And this is going to be some unique identifier that's identifying every task inside the list. And the same thing I can do for the finished task. So I will just define here, I will copy this value from here. I will put here whether the task is finished. Well, the task is finished if it is in finished task. So I will just print here true. And the ID is going to be, well, I don't know, 3. And the third, the name of the task is birthday party. Okay. So right now we defined two different variables. The first variable is called pending tasks, and this is an array which contains JavaScript objects, and these JavaScript objects are representing our tasks. And the second variable is called finished tasks, and this variable or this array contains only one element, and this is representing one task that is finished. Okay, so the next thing we would like to do is we would like to print these tasks. Okay, so if you check the application, So before printing pending tasks, we have to print this text pending tasks, and the same thing for the finished tasks. So I'll just go here and I will print h2 tag with pending tasks. I will close this h2 tag, and then here I want to start printing my tasks, right? So normally I would somehow write the tasks as some kind of a container. So I will just add here a div with the class tasks container, and I will close this div, and inside this div I will just print pending tasks. So in order to print pending tasks, well, we already learned we can use the v4 directive. So I will open the div, I will write v-4, and I will close this div. So let's concentrate on this part. As I explained you before, we want to loop over the pending tasks. So I will just copy this pending tasks. I will print it here. And then this is representing all tasks, all pending tasks. So I want to grab just one task from this pending task. So I will just write here pending task inside pending tasks. Well, I can change the name of this variable. I can just name this variable as task. It's up to you. How would you like to name this? Let's leave it then as a task here. Okay. And as you can see here, we are getting this error that we talked about in the previous tutorial. So we would like to improve the speed of our application and helping a view framework to improve the speed. So I will just write v-bind, and then here I want to say the key is defined by task.id. Okay, so what's happening here? We are looping over the pending tasks, and every time when we get this object is going to be assigned to this variable here. And I want to identify every row where I'm going to print my task is identified. So every row is identified by the task ID. And this ID is unique for every task. Instead of ID, I could also write the name, but ID is more convenient, so I will just keep it ID. Okay, so what's happening here right now, I will just repeat it one more time. So we are looping over the tasks that are defined inside the pending task array. And this task variable is in one moment going to be this object here. This object is going to be assigned to the task. Then in the second iteration, this object is going to be assigned to the task variable, and so on and so on. Okay, so now I want to print the name of the task, right? So here I have the name. If I just print this task here, that's something that I can do, you will see what will happen. So I will just print task here. I will save this. And if I go back to the website, you will see that task is, well, it's printed, but every property of the task is printed. And I just want this name here. I want just this name property of the task object. And this is representing this whole object here. So if I want to just print the name, I can say task.name. And if I save this, if I go back to the website, then you can see here inside the pending tasks, we are printing call.dat and buy the tickets. Okay, so the same logic could apply if we want to print finished tasks, right? So I will just add the h2 tag for finished tasks. I will close this h2 tag, and here under I want to print, I will add also this task container. I will need this just for styling later on. So if you're wondering why I'm adding that, it's just for styling. And here, once again, I want to loop over the finished tasks. So in the loop above, we looped over the pending tasks, and now we want to loop over the finished tasks. So one more time, I will define a div. I will write v4, and I will close this div. And what I will do here is I will copy this finished tasks, and I will put it here. And then I want to grab just one single finished task. So I can define is as a finished task inside the finished task. So note here, I'm intentionally changing the name of these variables so you're not confused what's happening here. So you can name this variable at whatever you want. Okay. So once again, we want to improve the speed a bit. We want to help a Vue framework to improve the speed of our page by defining a key for our objects inside a template. So I'll say vbind, and here semicolon key. And once again, every finished task is identified by its ID. So I'll just print here finished task.id. Okay, now everything is good. The last thing that we have to do here is we have to print the name of the finished task. We can do that by using interpolation. So finished task.name. Okay. And right now, if I save this, if I go back to the page, you can see the finished tasks, but there is one finished task here, and it's not printed. So what's happening here? Obviously, probably I wrote here, yeah, I misspelled this name of the variable. So if I go now back to the page, it still doesn't work. Okay, probably I have to do it here. Okay, now it's good. And once again, here's the finished task. So what we have learned in this tutorial, well, we defined two different variables. The first variable was pending tasks, where we are going to keep all our pending tasks. And the second object was the second pending task, and the second array that we have defined is our finished tasks, and here we define just one finished task. After that, we print some h2 tag, and inside this tasks container, we looped over the tasks, the pending tasks to print them, and we looped over the finished tasks to print them. And I just want to note one thing. When you are looping, when you are using this v4 directive, this complete div is going to be printed. Not only something that is inside div, this complete div is going to be printed. So if you go back on the page and if you inspect this here, you will see that the complete div is printed, not only the text that's inside the div. Okay. So that's it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we are going to style our application a bit so it looks like something that our client wants to have. Okay.